The grand halls of Graceland hummed with a different kind of energy. That Tuesday, it wasn't the usual buzz of new songs being rehearsed, or fans gathered at the gates, or the clinking of dishes from the kitchen. No, this was the quiet, almost conspiratorial hum of mischief brewing, a scent as distinct to the Memphis Mafia as Elvis's favorite peanut butter and banana sandwiches. In a secluded corner of the sprawling estate, tucked away in the pool house, Joe Esposito, Jerry Schilling, Red West, Sonny West, and Marty Locker huddled together. Their faces were alight with suppressed grins, their eyes gleaming with a shared secret. They were the inner circle, the loyal friends, the protectors, and on days like this, the masterminds of elaborate pranks designed to keep life at Graceland interesting, especially for their boss, Elvis Presley. "All right, listen up," Joe whispered, leaning forward, even though they were alone. Joe, always the organizer, had a notepad in hand, looking like a general planning a military operation. "This one, boys, this one is going to be epic. The king won't know what hit him." Jerry, ever the thoughtful one, adjusted his glasses. "Are we sure about this? Joe Elvis can get pretty riled up when he's pranked, even by us." Red, big and burly, chuckled a low rumble in his chest. He sparkled like a disco ball for a week. Joe cleared his throat, bringing them back to the present. "This isn't just a simple glitter bomb or shoe swap. This is a full-scale, inner-racic experience. We're talking about Operation Popcorn Payload." Silence hung in the air for a moment, then Marty's eyes widened. "No way, you're serious?" "Dead serious," Joe confirmed, a triumphant smirk spreading across his face. "While Elvis is sound asleep, we're going to fill his entire bedroom with popcorn, every inch of it. Then at the crack of dawn, we set off a ridiculously loud alarm and watch him wake up in a sea of kernels." Chorus of hushed hoots and excited whispers filled the room. This was a prank on a whole new level. It was harmless, yes, but undeniably grand. The sheer volume of popcorn required the stealth needed to get it into his room without waking him. It was a masterpiece of planning. "How much popcorn are we talking?" Sonny asked. Already picturing the scene. "Hundreds of bags unpopped, of course," Joe replied, tapping his pen on the notepad. "We'll need to buy it in batches, so nobody gets suspicious. And we'll need a couple of those industrial-sized popcorn machines, the kind you see at movie theaters." "Ready to roll? And the cleanup?" Jerry interjected, always the practical one. Joe waved a dismissive hand. "Details, details. That's a problem for tomorrow. The important thing is the look on his face, priceless." Red slapped his knee, roaring with silent laughter. "Oh man, he's gonna be so confused. Imagine waking up and thinking you're in a giant popcorn pit." "And what about the smell?" Marty added, his eyes twinkling. They spent the next hour meticulously planning every detail. Who would buy the popcorn and where? How they would sneak the machines in after dark. The timing of when Elvis usually went to bed, the exact moment to trigger the alarm. They even discussed filming it just to capture the pure, unadulterated shock on the king's face. "Okay, so here's the schedule," Joe announced, holding up his notepad. "Tomorrow's split into teams for popcorn acquisition. Don't go to the same store then. By midnight, we meet here, ready to execute. Elvis usually sleeps heavy, especially after a late-night jam session. This is our window." A wave of confident smiles swept through the group. They were the Memphis Mafia, and they were about to pull off their most ambitious prank yet. They pictured Elvis groggy and bewildered, wading through a golden sea of popcorn. The thought alone was enough to send them into fits of silent giggles. They were so sure of themselves, so convinced they had the element of surprise. Little did they know the king himself had an uncanny way of sensing things, a silent radar for shenanigans. And this time his radar was starting to pick up a faint but distinct signal. The game, as they say, was afoot. The next day dawned with an almost palpable tension. At least for the members of the Memphis Mafia, they moved through Graceland with a newfound stealth, their conversations hushed, their glances furtive, their mission, Operation Popcorn Payload. First on the agenda was the popcorn exposition. Red and Sunny, with their imposing builds, were sent to procure the industrial popcorn machines. Make sure they're quiet ones, Joe had stressed, and that they can pop a lot of corn fast. They'd opted for a commercial rental, making up a story about a massive charity carnival. Jerry and Marty were tasked with the actual popcorn itself. Hundreds of bags of unpopped kernels. They hit different grocery stores across Memphis, buying only a dozen or so bags at each, scattering their purchases to avoid suspicion. They returned to Graceland with their cars practically overflowing, carefully stashing the bags in an unused storage room, hidden under old stage props. And Christmas decorations throughout the day. Elvis seemed oblivious. He was in the living room strumming his guitar, humming a new melody. Later, he was by the pool, laughing with Linda Thompson. He even had a meeting with his colonel about an upcoming tour. The Mafia watched him, their nerves a mixture of excitement and fear. Had he noticed anything? Was he on to them? Marty, ever the worrier, saw Elvis walk past the storage room where the popcorn was stashed. Elvis paused, his head cocked slightly as if he heard something. Marty's heart leaped into his throat. But Elvis just scratched his head, shrugged, and continued on his way. Marty let out a silent sigh of relief. Maybe they were in the clear as evening approached. The pace quickened. Dinner was a hurried affair for the Mafia boys. They made excuses, claiming early nights, needing to catch up on paperwork, anything to get Elvis to retire to his bedroom without lingering too long downstairs. "You guys seem a little jittery tonight," Elvis observed over dessert, a knowing glint in his eyes. He took a bite of his banana pudding. "Something on your minds?" The Mafia members exchanged quick, panicked glances. "Just tired. You know how it is?" Elvis just smiled a small, almost imperceptible smile, and took another bite. He didn't press. This made the Mafia even more nervous. Was he playing along, or did he genuinely have no idea? They decided it was the latter. They were just being paranoid. The Mafia held their breath as he walked up the grand staircase. They waited until they heard the soft click of his bedroom door closing. Then, and only then, did they spring into action. Red and Sunny carefully maneuvered the two bulky popcorn machines through the back entrance and down the hallway leading to Elvis's bedroom. They were surprisingly quiet, thanks to Red's brute strength and Sunny's careful guidance. Joe, Jerry, and Marty began lugging the hundreds of bags of unpopped kernels from the storage room. The plan was simple. Set up the machines just outside Elvis's door, open the door quietly, then unleash the popcorn. They would aim the chutes to spray the popped corn directly into the room, creating a mountain of golden kernels. They had even brought a small battery-operated leaf blower to help spread the popcorn evenly. "Okay, last check," Joe whispered, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "Machines ready? Popcorn ready. Alarm clock set for 6 a.m. in his room." "Check, check, and check," Marty confirmed, giving a thumbs up. They stood at Elvis's bedroom door, a collective thrill running through them. This was it. The culmination of days of secret planning. Joe took out a key, his hand trembling slightly with excitement. He slowly, painstakingly, inserted it into the lock, turning it with excruciating slowness. The click was almost imperceptible. Pushed the door inward, inch by agonizing inch, peering into the darkness. Elvis's room was silent, bathed in shadows. He could just make out the shape of Elvis's bed, the covers slightly rumpled. Everything looked normal, perfect. Go time. Joe mouthed to the others. Red and Sunny prepared the machines. Jerry and Marty readied the first bags of kernels. Their hearts pounded like drums. This was going to be epic. What they didn't know, however, was that Elvis was not as oblivious as he seemed. Earlier that day, he had noticed a stray, unpopped popcorn kernel near the storage room. He had seen the subtle, furtive glances among his friends at dinner. He had felt that familiar hum of mischievous energy in the air. Elvis was a man of routines, but he also had an almost supernatural knack for picking up on the vibrations of his inner circle. And the vibrations tonight were definitely off-kilter. Elvis Presley was many things. A superstar, a charmer, a generous friend, and a man who loved a good laugh. But he was also fiercely intelligent and incredibly perceptive. As the Memphis Mafia bustled around Graceland that day feeling oh so clever, Elvis was quietly observing. It started subtly, a slight shift in the usual rhythm of the house. Marty, usually so boisterous, was uncharacteristically quiet during breakfast, sneaking glances at Joe. Joe, usually direct, was speaking in hushed tones on the phone, his hand cupped around the receiver. Then there was the strange, almost sickly sweet scent he caught a whiff of near the storage room. Something like new plastic, mixed with unpopped corn. Later that afternoon, as he was walking by the side entrance, he saw Red and Sonny struggling with something bulky wrapped in a tarp. They quickly ducked behind a bush when they saw him. Just some new gardening equipment, Red had stammered too quickly. Elvis had simply smiled and nodded, but his mind started piecing things together. Gardening equipment that needed 2 burly men in a tarp, highly unlikely. He'd also noticed the boys were strangely eager for him to go to bed early. Get some rest, Jerry had urged, almost pushing him towards the stairs after dinner. You've got a big day tomorrow. Elvis had played along, a faint smile touching his lips. He knew his boys. He loved their loyalty, their friendship, their crazy antics. They were his family, his grounding force in a world gone wild. And he knew deep down that whatever prank they were cooking up, it came from a place of affection, a desire to inject some fun into their often demanding lives. But Elvis wasn't just going to let himself be the victim. Oh no. King had a mischievous streak of his own and a mind that worked faster than any of them. He decided then and there that he wouldn't just thwart their prank. He would turn the tables on them beautifully, and in a way that would remind them how much he cared. After he went upstairs and closed his bedroom door, he didn't go to sleep. Instead, he carefully opened his door just a crack, listening. He heard the muffled thuds and whispers, the distinct sounds of something large being moved down the hallway. He even caught a whiff of that familiar raw corn smell. Popcorn, he murmured to himself, a slow smile spreading across his face. Hundreds of bags of it, I'll bet, he chuckled softly. They're going to fill my room with popcorn. The image of himself waking up in a sea of kernels was amusing, but he had a better idea. An idea that would surprise them, delight them, and make them realize that while they were good at pranks, he was better at showing his love. His counterplan began to form. It wouldn't be about getting even in a petty way, but about getting ahead in a heartwarming way. He thought about his boys, about their late-night talks, their shared passions. They loved movies almost as much as he did. They loved good food, good company, and anything that brought them together. Perfect. He wouldn't be there. They'd come in ready to unleash their popcorn fury, only to find an empty room. That would be the first surprise. Then he'd lead them to the second, much bigger surprise. Quietly slipped out of his bedroom through a connecting door that led to a rarely used back staircase. He needed an accomplice, someone discreet and trustworthy. He knew just the person. His longtime cook, Mary, who had seen countless pranks and secret plans unfold over the years. He found Mary in the kitchen, tidying up. She jumped slightly when she saw him, not expecting him downstairs so late. "Elvis, is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect, Mary," he whispered, a conspiratorial glint in his eyes. "In fact, I need your help with something special." He laid out his plan, not the prank itself, but the counter-prank. He needed a movie projector, a massive screen, their favorite snacks, and a way to make sure there was plenty of popcorn, the kind that made you happy, not angry. And he needed it all set up in the main TV room, the big den where the boys usually hung out by early morning. Mary listened, her eyes widening as the genius of his plan dawned on her. She started to giggle. "Oh, Elvis, you are something else. They won't know what hit them." "That's the idea," Elvis said, winking. "Now, let's get to work. We don't have much time." While Joe, Jerry, Red Sonny, and Marty were meticulously preparing their popcorn pail outside his door, completely unaware of his absence, Elvis and Mary were quietly transforming. He wasn't just planning a prank, He was planning a moment of pure, unadulterated friendship and joy, and it was going to be beautiful. The air outside Elvis's bedroom door was thick with anticipation. Joe, Jerry, Red Sonny, and Marty stood poised, ready to execute Operation Popcorn Payload. Their hearts thumped against their ribs, a mixture of excitement and suppressed laughter. "Okay," Joe whispered. "Elvis's door is slightly ajar. He must have forgotten to close it all the way. Perfect. No creaky hinges to worry about." He pushed the door open a few more inches, enough for them to peek inside. The room was dark, the curtains drawn. They could faintly make out the shape of Elvis's massive bed. It looked untouched, the covers still slightly rumpled from when he'd supposedly climbed in hours ago. "Red Sonny, get the machines ready," Joe instructed, his voice barely a breath. "Jerry, Marty, you're on popcorn duty. Remember, aim for maximum coverage. We want this room completely buried." Red and Sonny carefully positioned the two commercial popcorn machines directly in front of the open doorway. The machines hummed quietly as they warmed up, ready to unleash a blizzard of fluffy kernels. Jerry and Marty began tearing open the first of the hundreds of bags of unpopped corn, pouring them into the machine hoppers. The scent of hot corn began to fill the air, mingling with the faint smell of Elvis's cologne from inside the room. They worked in practiced silence, their movements precise and coordinated. They envisioned the chaotic scene that would greet Elvis in just a few hours. The image alone was enough to make them bite their lips to keep from bursting out laughing. As the first machine sputtered to life, popping corn in a rapid fire rhythm, Jerry leaned in close to Joe. "You think he'll be mad?" Joe grinned. "Nah, he'll pretend to be. But he loves a good prank. He'll grumble about the cleanup, but then he'll laugh about it for weeks." "This is legendary stuff, Jerry." Popcorn machines roared into full gear, chuffing out a steady stream of golden, fluffy kernels that cascaded into the dark room. Red and Sonny adjusted the chutes, aiming for an even spread. Jerry and Marty continuously refilled the hoppers, their hands moving quickly, fueled by adrenaline. Within minutes, a growing mound of popcorn was visible inside the room, glowing faintly in the dim light. The sheer volume was impressive. It was rising quickly, starting to engulf the furniture, the lamps, the piles of clothes Elvis often left on his chairs. "Looking good, boys," Marty hissed, doing a little victory dance. "It's a blizzard in here." They worked for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only about an hour. The room filled slowly but surely with a golden, aromatic blanket of popcorn. It piled up against the walls, creating soft hills and valleys. The bed was completely covered, a strange, fluffy mountain in the center of the room. Finally, the last bag of corn was popped. The machines were shut off, and the silence that followed was almost deafening, broken only by the soft rustle of the settling popcorn. "All right," Joe whispered, surveying their handiwork with immense satisfaction. "Now for the grand finale, the alarm." Marty carefully stepped into the popcorn-filled room, wading through the soft, knee-deep kernels. He found Elvis's bedside table, now almost completely obscured by the fluffy white stuff. He placed a small but incredibly loud alarm clock onto the table, setting it for 6 a.m. The blaring sound, combined with waking up in a popcorn pit, was sure to give Elvis the shock of his life. As Marty waded back out, carefully closing the door behind him, the five men stood back, admiring their masterpiece. The room was dark again, but they knew what lay within. A truly spectacular mess, a testament to their dedication to a good prank. "Now we wait," Joe said, unable to suppress his grin. "And we get ready for the show." They tiptoed away from Elvis's bedroom, their mission accomplished. They congratulated each other with silent high fives and pats on the back. They were exhausted, but exhilarated. They had pulled it off. The king was about to wake up to the prank of a lifetime. They made their way to their own rooms, planning to get a few hours of sleep before the big reveal at 6 a.m. They drifted off, dreaming of Elvis's bewildered face, his first confused shout, And then inevitably his roaring laughter. They felt so clever, so triumphant. But they had no idea that their carefully laid plans had already gone off the rails, or that Elvis, far from being the unsuspecting victim, was already several steps ahead, orchestrating his own much more beautiful surprise. Outside Elvis's bedroom, the popcorn machines and empty bags had been quietly cleared away by the triumphant Memphis Mafia. Inside the room was a fluffy golden wonderland, completely silent. At precisely 6 a.m., the alarm clock on Elvis's bedside table shrieked to life, a jarring mechanical scream designed to wake the deepest sleeper. Its sound reverberated through the popcorn, muffled slightly but still undeniably loud. Down the hall in their own rooms, Joe, Jerry, Red Sonny, and Marty stirred. Sleep-heavy eyes blinked open, then widened in anticipation. This was it, the moment of truth. They had meticulously timed their own alarms to go off a minute before Elvis's, giving them just enough time to gather outside his door and witness the chaos. They stumbled out of their rooms, rubbing sleep from their eyes, but their faces were alight with excitement. They met in the hallway, exchanging giddy, silent glances. Joe held a small hand-tall camera, ready to capture the magic. They crept to Elvis's bedroom door, which they had carefully closed after the popcorn deployment. Joe took a deep breath, building the suspense. The loud, insistent ringing from inside the room was still going strong. "He's got to be awake now," Jerry whispered, barely able to contain his laughter. "All right, boys," Joe whispered back, his voice thick with triumph. "Get ready for the show of a lifetime." With a dramatic flourish, Joe threw open Elvis's bedroom door. They braced themselves for the explosion of sound, the bewildered shout, the sight of their king emerging from a sea of popcorn. Instead, they were met with silence and an empty room. The alarm clock continued its shrill protest from amidst the popcorn, but there was no Elvis. His bed, a mountain of kernels now, was clearly unoccupied. Covers were still rumpled, but there was no indentation where a body should have been, no sign of him anywhere. The Mafia members froze, their excited grins slowly melting into looks of confusion. "What in the—" Red muttered, his brow furrowing. "He's not here, Sonny," stated the obvious, his voice flat with disbelief. Joe slowly lowered the camera, his triumphant expression replaced by bewilderment. But where is he? He went to bed last night, we heard it." They cautiously stepped into the room, wading through the soft, kneaded popcorn. The alarm continued to blare its sound, a mocking echo in the empty space. They peered around, checking the ensuite bathroom, the connecting dressing room. Nothing. "Did he find out?" Marty whispered. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. "Did he sneak out? But how?" Jerry picked up a handful of popcorn, letting it sift through his fingers. "He must have. But how did he know we were so careful?" A wave of disappointment washed over them. All that planning, all that sneaking around, all that popcorn, and Elvis wasn't even there to experience it. "Maybe he's in the kitchen getting breakfast," Red suggested. A flicker of hope in his eyes. "At 6 a.m., Joe countered, shaking his head. They stood there amidst their popcorn creation, feeling utterly deflated. The laughter and triumph they had anticipated had turned into a hollow echo. They had been outsmarted, but they couldn't figure out how. Just then, Joe noticed something on the bedside table, half buried in the popcorn, right next to the still wailing alarm clock. It was a small folded piece of paper. He carefully dug it out, brushing off the kernels. It was a note written in Elvis's unmistakable, elegant hand. "My dearest boys, looks like you went to a lot of trouble last night. All this popcorn just for me. You shouldn't have, though I appreciate the thought. Since you're up so early and clearly in the mood for a little fun, I've got a surprise for you. Follow the trail. It leads somewhere cozy. P.S. Don't worry about the cleanup. That's part of the fun for me anyway. See you soon. Love, E." The Mafia members read the note over each other's shoulders, their faces tressed in confusion to dawning realization. Then to a mixture of awe and bewilderment. He knew he had known all along. and he had turned their prank back on them. But what was this trail, and where did it lead, and what was his surprise? And then a single, perfectly popped popcorn kernel lay on the polished floor, right outside the door, and another a few feet away. Elvis was still playing his game. And for the Memphis Mafia, the feeling of defeat was quickly replaced by a surge of curiosity and a reluctant admiration for the king's cunning. Their prank had gone awry, but something much more intriguing was now unfolding. A single, perfectly popped popcorn kernel lay on the polished hardwood floor just outside Elvis's popcorn-filled bedroom. Then another a few feet away, leading down the grand staircase. The Memphis Mafia stared at the trail, a mix of exasperation and intrigue on their faces. "He's leading us on a wild goose chase," Marty grumbled, but there was a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Well, we started it," Jerry pointed out, already stepping over the threshold, following the scattered kernels. "Let's see where the king's trail leads." They followed the buttery breadcrumbs down the magnificent staircase, their footsteps muffled by the soft carpet. The trail continued through the living room, past the piano and the overflowing record collection, then turned down a dimly lit hallway. They rarely used one that led towards the back of the house, away from the main kitchen and dining areas. The faint scent of popped popcorn grew stronger as they walked, mixed with something else, a sweet, sugary aroma. They exchanged curious glances. This wasn't just a simple counter-prank. This was something elaborate. Popcorn Trail finally ended at a door usually kept locked, a door leading to the large den and TV room. This was a space usually reserved for Elvis and his closest circle, a place for late-night movie screenings and jam sessions. A soft, warm glow emanated from under the door. Joe, still holding his now useless camera, pushed the door open slowly, a sense of nervous excitement fluttering in his stomach. The sight that greeted them stopped them in their tracks. The large den, usually a comfortable but somewhat utilitarian space, had been transformed. A gigantic movie screen dominated one wall, currently displaying a paused image of an old Western film, one they all loved. Comfortable recliners and plush beanbag chairs, which had been mysteriously missing from other parts of the house, were arranged perfectly for viewing. And then there was the popcorn. Not piled high in a messy prank, but in huge, fluffy bowls scattered on every available surface, alongside other treats, boxes of candy, chilled sodas, and even a platter of Elvis's famous fried butter. He was sitting comfortably in one of the recliners. A soft blanket draped over him, a warm, knowing smile on his face. He held a large bowl of popcorn in his lap, munching contentedly. He wasn't mad. He wasn't even annoyed. He looked utterly at peace, almost regal in his pajamas. "Well, took you long enough," Elvis said, his voice warm and amused, as if he'd been waiting for them all along. "I was starting to think you got lost in the popcorn jungle upstairs." The Memphis Mafia stood frozen, mouths agape, their minds struggling to process the scene. The empty bedroom, the popcorn trail, its perfectly set-up movie night. It was an elaborate, thoughtful, utterly unexpected twist. "Elvis," Jerry finally managed, his voice a whisper of disbelief. You knew." Elvis chuckled, a low, rich sound that filled the room. "Let's just say a few stray kernels and some very suspicious behavior gave it away. You boys aren't as sneaky as you think you are." He gestured around the room. "But hey, I figured since you went to all the trouble of getting so much popcorn, we might as well put it to good use. And I knew you'd all be up bright and early anyway." He patted the empty recliner next to him. "Come on in, boys. The movie's just about to start. I figured we could watch True Grit. You've been wanting to see it again, haven't you?" The Mafia members slowly, almost reveringly, stepped into the room. The smell of fresh popcorn and warm pastries was intoxicating. They looked at the movie screen, then back at Elvis, who was simply beaming at them, his eyes twinkling with affection. They had planned to prank him, to surprise him, to make him laugh in bewilderment. But he had turned the tables on them so completely, so beautifully, that they were the ones left speechless. Overwhelmed not by annoyance, but by a profound sense of warmth and appreciation. Red was the first to break the silence, a low rumbling laugh escaping his chest. "You absolute genius, E." Sonny shook his head in amazement. "We thought we had you." Marty just collapsed into a beanbag chair, a mixture of defeat and pure joy on his face. This is amazing." Joe, camera still in hand, found himself without words. He just looked at his friend, his king, who had taken their mischievous prank and transformed it into an act of pure kindness. This wasn't just a counter prank, it was a testament to the extraordinary bond they shared. And in that moment, standing amidst the comfortable warmth of the den, surrounded by popcorn and their beloved Elvis, the Memphis Mafia knew they had been outsmarted, but in the most beautiful way imaginable. The Memphis Mafia slowly settled into the comfortable chairs and beanbags, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events. Their elaborate prank, designed to surprise Elvis, had spectacularly backfired, transformed instead into a heartwarming gesture of friendship. Elvis watched them, his smile widening. He took a sip of his soda, then paused the movie again. "So," he began, his voice laced with amusement, "you thought you were going to fill my room with popcorn, huh?" Joe, finally finding his voice, sheepishly nodded. We had it all planned out. Every detail, we thought it was foolproof." Elvis chuckled, shaking his head. "Foolproof, maybe, but not Elvis-proof. You boys are good, but I've been around your shenanigans long enough to spot the signs." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The furtive glances, the sudden urge for me to go to bed early, the strange smell of unpopped corn near the storage room, it all added up. "You smelled the popcorn?" Marty asked aghast. "Oh yeah," Elvis confirmed, a playful glint in his eyes. "And I saw Red and Sonny wrestling with what looked suspiciously like commercial popcorn machines, disguised as gardening equipment. Come on, boys, I know a rake when I see one." And that wasn't it. Red and Sonny groaned, remembering their clumsy attempt at disguise. "So, what happened then?" Jerry asked, genuinely curious. "You just snuck out while we were out there popping away." "Exactly," Elvis said. "Once I figured out what you were up to, I decided to turn your little prank into something more productive. I figured if you're gonna go to all that trouble, the popcorn shouldn't go to waste, and besides," he gestured around the cozy den I've been meaning away, "we haven't done one in a while." He looked at each of them, his gaze softening. "You boys mean the world to me. You're more than just my crew. You're my family. We spend so much time working, traveling, dealing with the craziness of my life. I wanted to remind us all that we can still have simple, fun times together, and what's better than a good movie?" The words hung in the air, a profound statement of affection. The Memphis Mafia, usually boisterous and quick with a joke, were quiet. They looked at Elvis, then at each other, a deep sense of humility washing over them. Their mischievous prank, born out of a desire for a laugh, had been met with such overwhelming generosity and thoughtfulness. "We just wanted to surprise you, E," Sonny said quietly, his voice a little thick. "Well, you certainly did that," Elvis replied, his smile genuine. "But I think I managed to surprise you a little more, didn't I?" They all burst out laughing, then a genuine heartfelt sound that filled the room. It was a mix of embarrassment, defeat, and immense love. They had been outsmarted. How could they be when the king had responded with such a beautiful gesture? "You got us," Joe admitted, shaking his head in amused defeat. "You absolutely got us. We were so sure we had you this time." "Never underestimate the king, fellas," Elvis teased, reaching for another handful of popcorn. "Especially when it comes to knowing my boys. Now, who's ready for true grit?" As the opening credits began to roll and the familiar strains of the movie's theme filled the room, The Memphis Mafia knew this wasn't just any movie night. It was a moment that solidified their bond. A testament to Elvis's unique spirit, his ability to turn any situation, even a silly prank, into an expression of his deep, unwavering love for his friends. They had set out to prank him, and he had in turn pranked them with an act of pure, heartwarming kindness, and they wouldn't have had it any other way. The movie started, and the soft glow of the screen filled the den, casting a warm light over the gathered friends. The earlier tension and excitement of the prank, and then the surprise of being outsmarted, melted away, replaced by the comfortable camaraderie that was the bedrock of their lives at Graceland. The air was filled with the gentle sounds of the movie, punctuated by the crunch of popcorn and the occasional slurp of a soda. Red West, usually so stoic, let out a hearty laugh at a particularly witty line from John Wayne. Jerry Schilling, ever observant, leaned forward, completely engrossed in the plot. Marty Lacker and Sonny West were huddled together on a beanbag, sharing a giant bag of M&Ms. Joe Esposito, having put his camera away, simply leaned back, a relaxed smile on his face. Elvis watched them, a deep sense of contentment settling over him. This was what he cherished most, these moments of normalcy, of shared laughter and quiet companionship, away from the demanding glare of the spotlight. These men, his Memphis Mafia, were his anchors, his brothers. "You know, E," Joe said during a pause in the movie, his voice soft, "we really thought we had you this time. We were so careful." Elvis chuckled. "You were careful, all right, but like I said, I know you boys. I could feel the mischief in the air. It's like a sixth sense when it comes to you lot." "It really was a genius move, though," Marty added, shaking his head. "Turning our popcorn prank into a full-blown movie night. We were so ready to see you. Confused, and then, boom, you flipped the script." "Yeah," Red agreed. "And the movie choice, True Grit, is perfect. We've been talking about watching it again for weeks." Elvis smiled. "I listen to you fellas more than you think. I hear what you talk about, what you enjoy. It's important to me that you're happy, that you have fun. This life we lead can be a whirlwind, and enjoy each other's company." His words resonated deeply with them. They knew the intensity of Elvis's life, the constant demands, the relentless pace, and they knew how much he relied on them, not just for protection and logistics, but for friendship and stability. This gesture, this turning of their prank into an act of care, underscored his profound appreciation for them. They continued watching the movie, the shared experience deepening their bond. Every now and then, one of them would glance at Elvis, and he would meet their gaze with a warm, knowing smile. There was an unspoken understanding passing between them. They had tried to catch him off guard, and he had responded with overwhelming generosity. As the movie drew to a close and the credits rolled, a comfortable silence settled over the den. Everyone was full of popcorn and good cheer. "That was amazing, E," Jerry said, stretching contentedly. "Seriously, thank you. We're sorry about the, popcorn mess upstairs." "Don't you worry about it," Elvis said, waving a hand dismissively. "It's already being taken care of. Besides, it made for a great story, didn't it?" They all laughed, imagining the cleanup crew's surprise earlier that morning. This was a story they'd tell for years, a legendary tale of the king's wit and generosity. "We really do appreciate you, E," Sonny said, his voice earnest. "More than you know. You always think of us." Elvis looked around at his friends, his eyes shining with genuine affection. "And I appreciate all of you. Every one of you. Through thick and thin, you're always there. And sometimes," he winked, "you even manage to keep things interesting around here." The night had started with a mischievous prank, but it ended with a profound display of friendship, loyalty, and love. The Memphis Mafia had tried to get the jump on Elvis, but he had, as always, been one step ahead, turning their playful jab into a heartfelt embrace. And in that moment, surrounded by popcorn, laughter, and the warmth of their unconventional family, They knew that life with Elvis was never boring, always surprising, and forever filled with an extraordinary kind of love. The sun was fully risen now, casting long golden streaks through the windows of Graceland's den. The movie had ended, the last handfuls of popcorn consumed, the sodas emptied. The Memphis Mafia, still feeling the comfortable afterglow of the surprise movie night, slowly began to stir. "I guess we should probably get to work now," Joe sighed, stretching his arms over his head. The thought of cleaning up the popcorn-filled bedroom upstairs was still a distant yet inevitable chore. "Oh, don't you worry about that, boys," Elvis said, a knowing glint in his eye. "Remember what my note said? Don't worry about the cleanup. That's part of the fun for me." Anyway, they looked at him confused. "What do you mean, Marty asked. "Well," Elvis began, rising from his chair, "while you were all sleeping, I had a little chat with the Graceland staff. They know I love a good prank, but they also know I don't want anyone stressed, so they've already taken care of the popcorn. Consider it a gift from me to you for being such good sports." A collective gasp went through the Mafia. Not only had he turned their prank into a heartwarming surprise, but he had also handled the aftermath, freeing them from the tedious cleanup. It was another layer of his thoughtful generosity, a testament to how truly he cared for their well-being. "You really think of everything, Jerry said, shaking his head in amazement. "That's just the king for you," Red rumbled, a grin spreading across his face. "Always one step ahead, always looking out for us." Elvis just smiled, walking over to the window and looking out at the sprawling grounds of Graceland. "This place, this life, it wouldn't be the same without you. All the laughs, the late-night talks, even the pranks, it all makes us who we are. We're a family, aren't we?" "More than family, Sonny said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're brothers." They spent the rest of the morning lounging, talking, and reliving the night's events. The popcorn prank, or rather the anti-prank, quickly became a legendary story within the Graceland walls. It was told and retold each time, with more laughter and admiration for Elvis's quick wit and boundless heart. The incident served as a gentle reminder to the Memphis Mafia. While they enjoyed their harmless mischief, Elvis was always observing, always anticipating, and always ready to turn the tables in a way that uplifted rather than humiliated. It wasn't about winning or losing, but about the unique bond they shared. In the weeks and months that followed, there were other pranks, of course. That was just their nature, but a new layer of respect had been added. They knew that whatever they cooked up, Elvis might just have a counter move ready, one that would make them laugh and, more importantly, make them feel deeply loved. Elvis, for his part, reveled in their continued antics. He knew that their pranks, no matter how elaborate, were simply another expression of their affection, their way of keeping him grounded and human amidst the demands of his extraordinary life. He wouldn't trade it for anything. As the sun set over Graceland, casting long shadows across the lawn, Elvis often found himself looking out, seeing his boys laughing together, playing games, or simply relaxing. He'd smile. They were more than just his friends or his entourage. They were his chosen family. And in the grand, sometimes chaotic, sometimes lonely world of being Elvis Presley, they were his constant, his comfort, and the source of some of the most beautiful, unexpected moments of his life. And sometimes those beautiful moments started with a prank that went wonderfully, unexpectedly wrong.